All right. Good evening, and welcome to the June 6, 2024 meeting of the Minnetonka Planning Commission. The Commission generally meets on the first and third Thursdays of the month. The schedule and tentative agendas can be obtained by calling the Planning Department or by checking the city website at minnetonkamn.gov. The Commission holds public hearings on land use applications. From a specific process standpoint, that means we make recommendations to the City Council on rezonings, subdivisions, conditional use permits, and amendments to the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations. We also make final decisions on site plans, signage requests, and variance requests and expansion permits unless these requests are part of an application that must be heard by the City Council. In that case, the Commission makes a recommendation and the Council makes the final decision. The City notifies property owners within at least 400 feet of the sites, posts signs on the properties, and places notices in the Lakeshore Weekly News and the Minnetonka Memo. Any aggrieved party may appeal a final Planning Commission decision to the City Council. If you wish to appeal, you must submit a written request to the City within 10 days of this meeting. From a broader standpoint, the City's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations are the City's best efforts to codify a balance between individual rights and community responsibilities. Individual rights are easy to understand, but community responsibilities are more subtle. But the idea is that we, as members of the community, agree to limit our individual rights for the common good of the group. The Planning Department, the Planning Commission, and the City Council are charged with managing this sometimes difficult balancing act. We ask you to keep this broader perspective in mind as we review tonight's applications. Again, welcome. Staff, please call roll.
Henry.
Here.
Maxwell.
Here.
Minion.
Here.
Waterman.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Did I read Banks? Sorry, Banks.
Here.
And Chair Sewell.
Here. There are all 7 of us here tonight. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and I believe there is a change memo.
Yes, Chair. There's a change memo with some changes to conditions of approval and a correction in the name of the applicant. I'll go over that during my presentation for item 8A, the Wells Fargo redevelopment.
Great, thank you. Recognizing those changes, would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Motion Henry.
A second.
Second Banks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next is approval of minutes from our May 16th, 2024 meeting. Commissioners, any changes to those minutes? Doesn't look like it. Then we'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion.
Motion by Minion.
I'll second.
Second Waterman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next is item 5, report from staff.
Chair Sewell, just reporting on the 2 City Council meetings that have been held since your last Planning Commission meeting. On May 20th, the Council had 2 items on their agenda that the Commission previously considered. First was the plat of Woodhaven at Minnetonka. If you'll recall, that was a 5-lot subdivision on the west side of Plymouth Road, meeting all of our requirements. That was passed on the consent agenda. One a little bit different was a 12-month extension of the land use approvals for the Gray Star development. That was multifamily development on Red Circle Drive, Bren Road East, that corner development. The applicant is actively seeking investment partners. Is that what you would say, yeah. Ms. Wishnak? And so not sure if they'll be able to pull their permit and get construction started by the end of this year. And so requested that 12-month extension, and that was granted by the council. And then on June 3rd, again, 2 items before the council. First was the interim use permit for that coffee trailer just down the street here at Westdale Floral, passed on the consent agenda. And then the concept plan for the Amira Villas at Carlson Parkway. Very much the same comments that you all as a commission had, appreciating the size of the apartments that were, or the townhomes, I should say, that were proposed, but wishing to see some more density on that site. So we will see what the United Properties and the architect come back with. They have indicated that they plan to turn around an application very quickly. So I anticipate you'll see something here before the end of the summer. And your next Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for June 20th. I will tell you that that meeting is quite full. As of right now, we have just one meeting in July, so we're trying to get things on that June 20th agenda.
Chair, if I may add one more
You
thing.
may.
Just a reminder on the Boards and Commissions meeting, which is on July 17th. Okay?
Got it. I tried the link and I wasn't able to get it to work.
You didn't get through?
Pardon?
You didn't get through to the link?
No, it wasn't working.
Okay.
It sounds like Commissioner Maxwell had the same issue.
Okay.
So.
I
Let me
sent
check on the
Teresa a
link.
note. I had the same problems,
Okay.
and I waited a week, and I was able to get through the second time a week later.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But Sarissa
let me
did
just
send me-
push it
resend
again.
me
Okay. Yeah, we'll do
Just
that.
as an FYI.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on. Commissioners, anything to report? Doesn't look like it. We'll keep moving. Next on the agenda is item 7, consent agenda. These are items that are typically a little more routine in nature, in which we will pass all in one motion unless someone would like to pull and have a full discussion before we vote on it. The two items on the agenda tonight are item 7A, expansion permit for a deck at 3001 Groveland School Road. And that's a recommendation to adopt the resolution approving the permit. And item 7B, conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit at 3525 The Mall. And again, recommend the City Council adopt the resolution approving the permit. So, given that, Commissioners, would anyone like to pull these items and have a full discussion? Nope. Would anyone in the audience like to pull either of these items and have a full discussion on it? Nope. Doesn't look like it. And I know, Susan, we have someone on the line, but we're about to approve it. So unless they have something that they need to say, I think we're probably good to go. All right, we will move forward. So, Commissioners, would someone like to make a motion approving the items 7A and 7B?
Motion.
Motion Minion,
I will second.
second Hanson. Staff, please poll the commission.
Henry,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Minion,
Yes.
Waterman,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Chair Sewell.
Yes, motion carries. And item 7A is a final decision, and item 7B will be heard by the City Council on June 24th. Good luck with your applications. All right. Before we begin consideration of the non-consent agenda items, I'd like to review the steps in the process and the public hearing procedure that will be followed for each proposal. First, the item will be announced and the staff will report on the subject. The commission will then ask questions. Next, the applicant will be invited to make a presentation and offer comments. Commissioners may ask additional questions at this time. After the applicant is finished, the public hearing will be open to give anyone present the opportunity to comment on the proposal. If you wish to speak, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. We ask you to keep your comments brief and try not to repeat points already made. The public hearing will then be closed and no further comments will be allowed. The commission will discuss the proposal and make a decision. The first item on tonight's agenda is item 8A, items concerning Wells Fargo redevelopment at 1809 Plymouth Road. And Ms. Thomas, I believe this is your item tonight.
Thank you, Chair Sewell. This property, as you know, is located on the east side of Plymouth Road, about 2 acres in size. That's strange. It is the middle of 3 lots comprising a financial center complex that was originally designed and what I would say master planned by the Dayton Hudson group in the 1970s as part of the overall Ridgedale Center project. By 1982, the 3-story office building and bank building that you see there had been constructed on the site, and really the site has remained essentially unchanged then for the next 40 years. However, this evening, 1809, I'm going to say PLY LLC or Plymouth LLC, on behalf of Wells Fargo, is now proposing to redevelop that site. And this formal proposal really is the outgrowth of a concept plan that you all reviewed back in the summer of 2023. And I would say extensive conversation between the developer and city staff over the last several months. Phase 1 of the development proposal would be construction of a 7,350 square foot building on the south half of the site. Upon completion of that building, Wells Fargo Bank would move out of the existing building and into that westerly tenant space, with a future retailer or some type of service use taking up the easterly space. Then the existing building would be demolished and phase 2 would occur, with construction of about a 7,800 square building on the north side. It's envisioned that some fast casual restaurants would occupy space, again, the westerly side of that building, with retailer or service uses on the easterly side. The facades of both buildings would include glass, brick, stone, and metal panels. Parking for the buildings would be located along Plymouth Road, but then in this internal area central to both of those buildings. As I noted in the written staff report, the restaurants would have private outdoor dining areas associated with each of the restaurant spaces, but then there would also be a public outdoor seating area, of a focal point, I would say, on the east side of the site. And a sidewalk from that area would connect to existing sidewalks and ultimately to Ridgedale Commons Park. So the proposal does require approval of several items: a master development plan for the site, final site and building plans with building setback, parking setback, and tree removal variances, CUPs for the restaurant, and a drive-up ATM. I didn't point that out, but that drive-up lane that you saw is simply for an ATM facility, no drive-up baking, no restaurant drive-through. And then this also requires a sign plan approval. From staff's perspective, we support the redevelopment proposal generally, and we support all of these specific applications. We think that the uses proposed here are appropriate, they're consistent with the site's mixed-use land designation and just what's generally happening in the Ridgedale area. From a design perspective, staff's of the opinion that the buildings would be attractive, they would be complementary to the high-quality aesthetic that has happened recently in the more recent Ridgedale redevelopment projects. And the site design would provide a functional yet kind of distinctive layout in the area. We think that the variances are reasonable. This site predates all of the 394 or PID district requirements. And when those are applied to this site, they really come into conflict with some of our site and building plan standards. So we have two code standards that are in conflict. Specifically, we have a standard that looks at providing an internal sense of order, providing a desirable environment for occupants and visitors. A development could be designed to meet those setback requirements, essentially flipping the buildings and the parking area, but we think that would result in a less intuitive, a less desirable site design. This proposal, we think, is really more consistent with what we're trying to get out of the Ridgedale area. Secondly, the tree removal variances. If you've been to the site, you probably can see that these trees that are on the property are not part of a remnant forest or ecosystem. They are something that was planted, as part of the original 1970s plan, or maybe something that was planted after those 1970s trees died and were replanted. So maintaining those trees really doesn't contribute to the purpose of our tree preservation ordinance. The proposed landscape plan would double the number of trees that are currently on the site. And then finally, the sign plan is quite fair. It's a balance of the existing sign requirements in the ordinance as well as what we've already approved on the property immediately to the north. So to conclude then, a pretty short presentation, we do think that this proposal is reasonable. We think that it's an appropriate redevelopment for what is, quite frankly, a dated and underutilized site. And so we do recommend approval with the conditions that are outlined in your resolution. And I'll just go over quickly. The change memo really gets to an error in the resolutions on the name of the applicant. And then we just changed the order of when we would like a snow removal and chloride management plan. It's still required, it's just we changed when we would like that. And then we acknowledged that we're asking for some improvements that are off-site with regard to the sidewalks, and that will involve the adjacent property owner giving some easements. And we acknowledge that that adjacent property owner may say no. And if they say no, we can't hold this developer to those conditions. So we just noted that in the resolution. So those are the changes that are highlighted. So with that, I would turn it back to the chair.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Commissioner Waterman, looks like you have one.
Thanks, Susan. My pack isn't pulling up here. I recall reading some verbiage about maybe concerns about sign height. Could you just comment, refresh on any of that?
Yeah, certainly. Let me get back to the signage here. The signage that was shown, I suspect, and the developer can comment on this, was shown specifically for the tenant signage here that you're seeing, was probably a placeholder. It's just a little bit taller than our ordinance would allow. And so what we're suggesting is that the height of the signs needs to meet our ordinance standard. So that's what the sign plan would say, that the height of all of these signs needs to meet the ordinance standard. What we're allowing for in the sign plan is for these tenants to have signage on both their north and south faces, so that they essentially would have signage on both of the parking lot sides, whether that parking lot faces their own property or the parking lots that are off-site, which is just as what was approved on the building to the north.
Commissioner Hanson, I think you had a question too.
Yeah, maybe just to Ms. Thomas, the trees that come out, is there a requirement that trees go back in? I'm just probably forgetting if that's a rule that goes into play here.
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Hanson, yes, there's a mitigation requirement. There's also a requirement just for a landscape plan, and that requirement is pretty hefty when you redevelop a site. The developer has to reinvest into the site in terms of just overall landscaping. 2% of the value of their total project has to be put back onto the site in terms of landscaping.
Okay, that's helpful. That's always a nice visual impact that we have that in play. My second question, I'll probably have this for the applicant too, so just teeing you up for this. I forgot to ask you this earlier this afternoon when we chatted. I look at the kind of the proposed site and I see the two-way drive lane, I guess, and to me on this page or on the slide it looks pretty tight when I think about that. So is there concern about that? Should that just be a one-way horseshoe? That's just maybe something I'm throwing out there. It just looks tight. I could be totally just seeing that wrong, so I'm not sure if as a staff you guys have any concerns.
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Hanson, we were not concerned with that two-way. I think you mean internal to the site, the horseshoe there. We weren't concerned about that. Our traffic consultant did not raise that. The one group that did raise the concern was our fire marshal. It was more about would they be able to turn a fire truck around that radius. And so we do have a requirement that a truck template, we call it a fire truck template, be provided at the time of construction to show whether or not a fire truck can make that turn. And if it can't, then we may lose 2 parking stalls and on that interior and everything slide backward. Our code requires when parking is just on one side of a drive aisle, you can have a narrower drive aisle than when parking is on 2 sides of a drive aisle. So it does meet the code standard.
Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Banks.
Thanks, Chair. Ms. Thomas, did the city have any concerns with snow removal with this layout of the parking lot? Or is the snow removal plan, is that something we typically ask for a project similar to this one?
Yeah, Chair Sewell and Commissioner Banks, we do generally require a snow removal plan as part of commercial redevelopment. We want to understand where the snow is going so that we're not reducing parking beyond what would be required. Now, there is, in this scenario, as this is laid out with the retail spaces here, the service spaces, the site is a little bit overparked, so they do have some parking to give if there were some snow in this area. But yeah, we do require that snow removal plan pretty typically.
Okay. And then my second question, the current building, is it within the setbacks that we currently allow, or is it?
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Banks, that current building is non-conforming. It does not meet our current setback requirements.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Henry.
Thanks, Chair. Ms. Thomas, could you talk a little bit more about the chloride management plan? Is that something that's unique to this area, or is it something that we do for all applications?
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Henry, it's something that is a boilerplate language for most redevelopment projects in commercial areas. We actually have a template that we provide to developers, and it's not regulatory. We don't dictate what the chloride levels can be, but we want to know what is being applied.
For example, who they plan to contract with?
Correct.
And what's the weight of the salt that goes in, and how they plan to clean it up in the spring?
Correct.
Okay, good. So just to be clear, there's no enforcement if they don't clean it up unless somebody reports it, or there's no language, there's no teeth in this agreement.
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Henry, there is not in to the extent that we don't have a code requirement for other applications throughout our community, but we want to see a plan so that we can have some conversation with sites when they redevelop. And it's our natural resources folks who we put this condition in, maybe 5-6 years ago. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Minion, did you have a question?
We've got lots of questions. Will you speak a little bit to the distance to the closest residence to this property? And then going on that, I understand that there's not a drive-up window of communication for the bank or the restaurants, but if that were to happen, will you talk a little bit about the city and how they handle drive-up windows in relationship to the properties in general, what's around them?
Certainly, Chair Sewell and Commissioner Minion, though the closest residence would be the Avador Apartments, which are just across the street. They're just off this map here. So multifamily development. From the closest building itself, it's going to be about 75 feet from this closest point. From the ATM, the drive-up facility, it's probably more like 175 feet to the ATM. There is a provision in our code that talks about public address systems are not allowed if they can be heard from a residential property. And so in the event that the ATM had a recorded voice or something like that was saying thank you for your business, or whatever that recorded voice may be saying, that would be heard from across the street, and the city got a complaint about that, we would have to work with Wells Fargo to get that recorded voice turned down, essentially. I would say that US Bank to the south has a drive-up ATM. in close proximity to the Avador Apartments. And to my knowledge, oh, actually I can measure it on my map here. Let me do that. To my knowledge, and Ms. Wishnak, I don't know if to your knowledge, we have not received a complaint about that ATM. That's about 50 feet from the Avador. No, Julie doesn't know of any complaints there either. But we do have a mechanism, I guess is the point, to deal with that complaint if it were received.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell me a little bit about the green space? When I look at the plan right in front of me, I have to admit I had some problems opening the plans. Are we looking at the dotted portions? Are they a green space?
Correct.
Okay. And when we talk about the salt mitigation or salts mitigation, do we have anything in place that would maybe do rain leader management so we could capture some of that water that's not contaminated off the roofs and reuse that for watering or anything like that? Is there any guidelines on that so we're not over pressurizing or over putting too much pressure on our stormwater?
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Minion, in some development proposals, rainwater reuse has been proposed in, I would say, larger landscape areas. We've typically found our engineering staff and our natural resources staff have generally suggested that those reuse systems are more effective when they have larger areas. That is certainly something that the city has seen that we would support. It's not something that we require.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Otherwise, I think we're probably, oh, yeah, Commissioner Maxwell.
Yeah, I also had trouble opening the plans for this one, but I wanted to hear a little bit about parking. How many parking spots are in the proposal?
Chair and Commissioner Maxwell, I'll have to bring up the report, but I believe it's about 105, 106.
Yeah, and what was required per, it's 85, right, that's required per code, and so in the report you said that that allows for some flexibility, but I don't want to add extra impervious surface for parking. There's those couple of spots on the south and southeast that just look kind of awkward tucked in behind the buildings, so I just want to make sure it's not over parked. So could you talk about why we may need those extra 20 spaces that code does not require?
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Maxwell, yeah, I would tell you that one of the reasons that this project has taken the amount of time that it has to get before you is really about parking and looking at potential tenants for these spaces. And so, for example, if other or different types of uses wanted to be in these spaces, probably those 106 stalls are needed. If a restaurant use went into one of these retail spaces, if there were more restaurant uses. So that 106 is kind of the magic number for the site to allow for additional restaurant use on the property.
I see, thank you.
Is that something that we could start without keeping a green space, and then if demand requires it, again, if one of those tenants is a higher demand, then we could add those in?
Chair, you could certainly make the recommendation that the spaces along the edge.
I don't have to choose the spaces.
No, yeah,
I'm indifferent
that
on
space,
this.
yeah,
Which spaces,
that spaces.
I mean, it seems natural. There,
that spaces be left as proof of parking
Yeah.
until such time that they're needed. That's certainly within your purview to do that.
And I think a lot depends on, like you said, the tenants, whether it's a jewelry store versus say a chicken place, right? They're going to have very different parking demands, and so I guess until we know exactly who or what's going in there, maybe it's something that, as a commission, we could recommend or suggest. All right, I've moved on to comments too quickly. All right, anything else? Yeah, Commissioner Minion?
Will you just rehash a little bit the issue of the sidewalk and the easement? Is that something to do with, is it physically going to change the sidewalk? And maybe I should ask the applicant that. Is it something that's going to change the sidewalk, or is it just an access thing? Or you said Riley doesn't have much bearing on tonight, though. Did I understand that right?
Chair and Commissioner Minion, so this dashed line represents the property line for the project. And this is a sidewalk connection that currently does not exist. And when this project went through the concept plan, it was clear to city staff that there was a real desire on behalf of the council. Ms. Wishnack can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a desire on behalf of the council as things redevelop in the Ridgedale area to get good pedestrian connection, and in particular to get that good pedestrian connection over to Ridgedale Commons Park. And so to have a green space on this site and get that connection made. And so to get that connection made, this sidewalk here makes a lot of sense, rather than going all the way around the corner. But to get this connection made, the sidewalk would be on property that's actually owned by Avidor Apartments, which is also across the street from this little green space. That's why we're hopeful that that group will work with us and the applicant to make that connection. So not changing an existing sidewalk, but creating a new.
All right, I think we're probably ready for the applicant. If you want to come forward and offer a presentation or offer any comments, we'd love to hear from you. If you can give us your name and address for the record, and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for considering this project. My name's Hector Vinas. I'm president of One Court. We are the owners of 1809 Ply LLC. And we have been working on this project. Oh, my address is 2350 University Drive, Pembroke Pines, Florida. Okay. And although we are from Florida, I'll just give you a quick background. We've done a lot of development in the Twin Cities. We've been working here since 2007. So we enjoy working here. This is one of our favorite places to come visit. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. All right. Thank you, Julie. You know, we haven't worked in Minnetonka yet, but we have really enjoyed working with staff, and it has been a long process. So we started working on this project at the end of 2022, when we started working with Wells Fargo on different possibilities of what could be done on the site. And we had some tenant interest in the property. So after sitting down with staff, you know, the process went for about 18 months, where we went through probably 15 or 20 site plans. And like I said, we worked closely with staff to make sure that our project was something that worked well with what the requirements were, and also worked well with what Wells Fargo and what we needed to do at the site. And appreciate, you know, their help in getting us to this point. As you know, as Ms. Thompson said, the project is you know, consists basically of two buildings in a horseshoe shape, and we think the design is going to be really nice. So work very comfortably with and create more of a community neighborhood kind of look instead of a regular kind of like strip center look, where especially with the pergola and, you know, seating area that we created there, we've added a lot of landscaping. So I know that we mentioned that there was a 2% minimum, but we're going to far and exceed that, I'm sure. I don't know. Any questions from me?
All right. Let me ask the commission. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Henry, you have a question.
Thank you. Thanks for presentation too. And have you had any communication with the management at the Avidor about the potential for putting the sidewalk through, or is that more of a city matter?
We have not. The city said that they would reach out to them. We did reach out to the U.S. Bank property next door, because we have had contacts with them in the past. So they are considering allowing the sidewalk being done. So they're going to get us to the right people and, you know, go through their process for that.
Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry, So the building Avador is owned by Trammell Crow, and so that we do have contacts at Trammell Crow, and we don't go locally, but to the building ownership, so.
Good, thank you. That's what I was looking for. And have you sought any input from those who live around there? For example, in the Avador with proposal, I didn't hear, pardon if it was said earlier, but was there a neighborhood meeting about the proposed plan, and did you seek input from those living nearby?
We did. We had a virtual neighborhood meeting, and different people were on it. I'm not sure. I think some were residents. I couldn't tell you. It's hard to tell who's on there, but and we answered questions. It wasn't well attended at all. So, but we did have it. Yes.
Okay. And then third and last, the size of the communal seating area with the pergolas, it's a great addition. How did you come up with the size of that? Just curious with the restaurants in there. It looks, in my opinion, maybe a little bit too small, but I guess it's to scale and it's
I think the way I think it was a combination of staff and our design, what we needed as far as the number of buildings and square footage, but I think it's actually bigger than it appears on the plan. So it's going to be a focal point, and it's going to be well landscaped. So I think it'll look bigger than what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you had similar developments with communal seating areas like this? And if so, how did it go over?
We have in other parts of the country, and it depends. In some areas, I think they're very well used. I know that. I think in this area, when the weather's nice, I think it'll be used a lot because people enjoy enjoying the good weather. So, yeah.
Good. And then last, have you thought about sustainability in terms of trying to make sure that the buildings here are focused on carbon neutrality, maybe adding some solar panels on the roof, or making sure that you're exceeding building codes with making the buildings more efficient?
Well, definitely we're meeting the building code, and the building codes have been getting more and more efficient. We wish we could do solar panels. It's a very it's a difficult process because each one of these tenants, would pay their own power. If there was one tenant for the entire building, it might be more reasonable to do solar on the buildings. But it's difficult to do it. I wish there was an easier way to approach that.
It's probably a different matter, but at Ridgedale, the large mall right next door, there's a lot of solar panels on the roof too. So have you reached out to the management of Ridgedale to see how they negotiated that?
Yeah, so, with the mall, they are, they're responsible for the electricity for the entire mall. So for them, it's easier because they're controlling that aspect of it, where each one of these tenants will all be separate metered and they'll all pay for their own electricity. So it'll be hard to break it up. So we've done warehouse projects where we've done that. And if you look at, like a lot of freestanding buildings, like Whole Foods will do that on their buildings, and some Amazon buildings that are warehouses, will do that as well. It's easier when it's a one building, one tenant, than breaking it up like this.
Okay.
Or if we would pay the power for all the tenants, then that would be that would be a little bit unusual. Just because a restaurant would use a lot more power than a regular retail, for example. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson, you have a question.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome to Minnetonka.
Thank you.
Kind of want to focus in on the parking for maybe just one or two questions here. With it being probably a more retail and customer oriented site, is your vision that the 106 parking spots are all reserved for customers and not the staff of these 5 tenants you have?
It would be staff and customers both.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that for me, that probably leads to some thoughts in our comment section. I And then just from your experience, honestly, like the two-way horseshoe, whoops, excuse me, in your experience, is that, will that be tight, or could that be one way? Honestly, whatever, you're the developer, so whatever works best for your tenants and your customers ultimately, I would defer to you, but to me, I can see that feeling really tight.
You know, it looks tight the way it's drawn, but, you know, Kimberly Horn, which is our civil engineer, they designed it so that it is made for 2 cars and have enough backup for 2 cars. So I have to rely on them, that they're the professionals at it. The interesting thing too is that if, you know, the spaces that are in the horseshoe, as you notice, you know, they're wider at the front than they are in the back. And, but at the back is the minimum width that any space would require. So they're actually wider spaces. So you'd have a little bit more room to, like, if you're going to turn the car and back out, I think you'd have a little more room. But, you know, we'll relook at it again, you know, have the engineers check it out, because we definitely want it to go smooth.
No worries, you're smarter about this than me. It's your job, so you're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
One question that I had was, what are your,
So,
Again, John Deemer with One Corp. And I'll just say
can you
that
step up to the microphone? So
I'm
we can
sorry, John
capture it?
Deemer with One Corp as well. I would just say that the dimension on that aisle where there's two-way traffic is 24 foot wide, and 24 foot wide is, you know, universal standard for two-way traffic, you know, that's required. And I'll agree that you can see the area around the curve shrinks down from 24. And I believe, as Susan said, it's because there's only traffic coming out of one side there, so that's where the code allows it. So you'll see that the 24 feet where there's where 2 cars can back up, is 24 feet. But I think what is kind of throwing you off is as you go around that bend, when you only have 1 car backing up, you don't have the situation where you have 2 cars in such a small area. It kind of fishes down. But again, we'll look at that fire truck turn, and like Steph said, maybe have to pull that island back and lose 2 spots, and that would widen that up to the consistent 24 all the way around that loop.
Totally, and it's just a drawing, so I totally get that. I probably just have parking anxiety. We have spaces in Minnetonka that have been overwhelmed by traffic, and to be honest, I hope you are overwhelmed by traffic. That's a good problem. But then it becomes, it gets really tight, and it's big SUVs in the west side suburbs, so I just, not indifferent from anywhere else necessarily, but it just feels tight, so.
it's a good point, and it's, you know, we'll look into it. Thank you.
Commissioner Banks, did you have a question? Okay.
Quick question.
You can stay up, Tom.
Who would manage the property? Who would manage the property once the building is done?
So we would manage the property, and then what we would hire, you know, a local company that will do all the maintenance and snow removal, and as I was mentioning today to staff, that obviously since we have that pergola area, people will be using that daily, so there'll be daily people on the property maintaining it.
Okay.
You know, so.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yeah, Commissioner Minion, you have a question?
Following up on Mr. Henry's question, I don't know if I heard it from you, but can you explain if you're trying to exceed any of the energy standards, R values in the construction, or types of glass, anything like that? Can you tell us a little bit about how you're basically helping sustainability and building a quality, elevating the quality of the construction? Was there any things that you've done that's outside the normal or kind of made an extra step up?
Well, you know, at this stage, our drawings are preliminary, so we have not gotten into the working drawings, and we plan to do that once we receive the city council approval. So at that stage, you know, that part of the work will be analyzed and done. So at this point, I can only tell you that, you know, we will definitely meet the code, whatever the code is. So I'm not sure we'll be able to go beyond that, and we'll see if we will. Yeah.
I think all of us have a little bit of a heart for that island, that half-round island, and we want to make sure we have as much impervious surface as possible. I would encourage you to sit down with KH and maybe talk about a ramped curb with something that'll meet that H standard for a fire truck, for a fully loaded pumper engine. I think you can probably find a spot there that, even if it does make the minimum truck turns, by just changing the materials and the curbing, you can make it, my fear would be is that we would have an engine pull in there. If they jump that curb, it's sunk an engine, with tire on an engine, it gets stuck somehow, and we've got a piece of equipment on service. But I'm sure you guys can come up with a good plan to maintain the pervious surface and then still support that H standard for that fire truck. If you just kind of give that some thought, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that as we get into construction documents, that'd be required by staff, and that is required by staff, is to show that we have that proper maneuverability.
Okay.
So we'll be sure to make sure that the plans comply and indicate that.
Okay, and then like I had asked earlier, is there any thought about rainwater capturing to reuse? I assume that there'll probably be one tenant paying the irrigation bill, or is that on everybody? Is there a way to maybe just put some sort of in-ground tank, capture the good water off the roofs and reuse that for irrigation?
Yeah, that's also another good idea, and there's no reason not to do that. So the irrigation bill will probably, I'm not sure, irrigation is required, right? Or
That is a good question. Chair Sewell and Commissioner Minion, I do believe that our landscaping ordinance does require irrigation in redevelopment projects, yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of Mr. Henry's dilemma of having multiple tenants pay the electric bill. In this case, I would think only one or two people would pay that irrigation bill, and maybe that's an opportunity to,
No.
again, the more water we can pull off and not put into our stormwater systems, that's a great way to use that water in a way that you won't be having a higher water bill, and you'll be able to help the environment as well.
Yeah,
Just
I will-
appreciate your thought on that.
Yeah, no, I will just comment that existing site is pretty much, I think it's 81% impervious with no stormwater management system on it at all. It all just runs off the site. Our new design will require stormwater management. In the plan set in the middle of this parking lot is an underground stormwater detention system, which will provide water quality for the site that doesn't exist today, and as a require of your stormwater management code. So, yeah, like I said, today it all drains off. We will control the rate, and that also gives you volume control and water quality control as well.
But that's not reuse, it's just, it's a storage facility, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And I don't know.
Infiltrate some back in.
All right. And Ms. Thomas, do we have any rebate programs for stormwater?
Chair and Commissioner Minion, I do not believe at this time we do. No, that would be through our stormwater engineer, our water resources engineer. That would be a program that the city council would need to set up. And Ms. Wishnack has indicated that the council has discussed that previously and has chosen not to do that at this point.
Are they permitted and inspected yearly? Is there any provisions? Sorry, I didn't mean to spring you this out. It's just something that came to mind.
Chair Sewell and Commissioner Minion, all of our stormwater management facilities, whether above ground or underground, as part of a redevelopment proposal, we require a stormwater management plan be given to us. We require an easement over that stormwater management facility. There is an inspection that has to happen. They have to be functioning. If they're not functioning, the city goes to inspect them. The property owner has the opportunity to correct the situation. If it's not corrected, the city has the right to go in and correct that. So yes, all of that occurs, but the rebate for stormwater reuse, that's not something that we have at present.
Okay. Thank you very much.
One question that I had was, what are your thoughts on changing some of the parking that's called the southerly dozen spots to proof of parking? So leave them as green, and then if we were to need them, put them in at a later date. You don't have to pave then. Saves you money, and then we can wait and see if we need them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, like Ms. Thomas said, we've gone through various tenants, and the problem is that probably one of these tenants will be a restaurant tenant, and then we will need it. So we should know within the next couple months before we actually finish the working drawings. So at that point, we can address it and we can build the appropriate number of parking.
So you're far enough down the line of lining up tenants to get an idea of
Yes.
volume. Okay, all right. Just something to consider. Again, if if you don't have to pave it, again, save you money and
Right.
keep more impervious surface. So, other questions? Commissioner Waterman, you have a question?
I do. You basically answered it, but maybe just so it sounds like what you're pursuing might be like a full arc of 3 restaurants on the top. Is that conceptually what could happen, like that retail
It could,
store?
yes.
Okay, yeah, because it looks like there's some tables there. So would that be just like a lot of density for a bunch of restaurants in one area, or
So
have you had that?
whole building cannot be a restaurant.
Interesting.
If that building becomes a restaurant, that building would have 2 tenants. We don't meet the parking to have that whole building be a restaurant use. So if another restaurant tenant came in, it would be in a portion of that building, and there would be a second tenant in that building, or a fourth. Or
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So we're really, it sounds like we're over a lot on the parking, but we're not. And, you know, so, yeah. So that's why it's making it difficult to finish the leasing because of that, because we're trying to juggle the right size of restaurant versus other tenants. And, you know, as we know, you know, the economy has changed. You know, 75 to 80% of the tenants are restaurants now. That's and service tenants. You know, other retail is mostly going online. So
And the only reason kind of we have these questions is we could give you a tour around the city of lots of places that are dramatically overparked. There's lots of wide open parking lots that don't get used in Minnetonka. So the more we can curb that, no pun intended, I think the better off we'll be. So
I agree. I agree that I've seen them. So I don't disagree with you.
Yes, exactly.
I don't
Any other-
believe this is going to be overparked though.
Okay. Yeah, and we trust you wouldn't want to spend the money just for the sake of it. I know it's not in your best interest.
We
So
don't.
we're aligned in that, so that's good. Any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Henry.
Next year, one other question about the chloride management plan too. Being from Florida, maybe it's new to you, but it sounds like
it's
you've been
not.
here since 2007. So in your experience developing areas in Minnesota, have you found any improvements in, and maybe this is a question that's ancillary to what we're talking about here, but I'm curious about your personal anecdotes here. Have you seen salt usage in parking lots being reduced by those with whom you contract? I'm curious because I know the city has reduced their salt application on the road by 2/3, maybe 3/4. So now the biggest polluters of salt, which is dangerous to our groundwater, is in parking lots primarily, even in residences. So I'm curious to see what you found and what steps you've seen them take to reduce their salt usage on parking lots.
You know, I'll be completely honest with you. This is an issue that I wasn't really aware of. That was a problem. We have, you know, management staff at our company that does, you know, that contracts out to the people that, you know, do the snow removal. So, and they take care of it. So I really don't know the details about that. But now I will ask and I will find out, and I'll be glad to get back to you on that, because and make sure that they use a contractor that uses low salt. You know, I mean,
Thank you. Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah, appreciate you going further and asking them about that too.
Yeah.
Even something as specific as, I'm not sure about that central catch basin. Of course, when it melts, if there's salt on the parking lot, it's going to go back down into there. And
Yes.
I'm not sure if you can even put some kind of a cost prohibitive, but you can put some kind of a salt filtration system so you can skim it off and then you can remove it. Otherwise, it's just going to go back down into the groundwater supply. And that's a big issue. So thank you for bringing it to their attention.
all right, thank you.
Any final questions for the applicant? Doesn't look like it. All right, we may have more for you, but I think we're good.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you.
All right, we will open the public hearing. If anyone in the audience would like to come forward and offer any comments on this item, please come forward. Ms. Thomas, is there anyone on the phone for this item?
Chair Sewell, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, well, if there is, let me know. Otherwise, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, I think we're probably ready for comments.
Yeah,
You want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll get us going.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for coming to Minnetonka. Appreciate it. Sorry I'm not taller. It's a problem I've had my whole life. I look forward to supporting this project. Just full transparency, there's not a lot of places in Minnetonka where we can get density, and so it's I struggle with this being a one-story building, and in my head it's got the Avador next to it, and other 6-story apartment buildings next to it, so I was trying to balance, like, does this make sense? Ultimately, I think this is a really nice concept. It adds options for our residents and adds appeal for other, adjoining cities to come be in Minnetonka. I like the walkability. I really hope the sidewalk connects. It's turning into a really walkable area in Ridgedale, and so I appreciate the council's focus on that. I hope every parking spot here gets built. I'll just say that for myself, because I think it's going to be really tight eventually, especially if employees are occupying, I'll guess, 20 of the 100 spots right out of the gate. So with that, I look forward to supporting and dining in fast casual pergolas later.
Sounds good. Thank you. Other comments? Yeah, Commissioner Henry, what do you think?
Well, I generally agree with Commissioner Hanson about the use of the property. I think it's an appropriate use. I'd also, when I first studied this, I thought, well, shoot, I'd sure like to see higher density as well, just because it is a prime opportunity for it. That land it's right next to Ridgedale, the Avador is there, but I also understand that this fills a need, and there is demand for the type of business that is being proposed in here. So it's not perfect, but I think it's good use of the property, and I'll also support it. I like that it has some distinction where the parking is not just the standard parking, so maybe people are going to plan to meet there, meet in the round parking area with the public pergolas, and we'll have dinner or something. So I like it, and you're right. If you look at it on here, of course, it's not as big as what it's going to be in the real life, but I'm sure that you did the work on it, and that's plenty of space for people eating. The plan of the buildings themselves, city said it's an attractive layout, and the layout is attractive. I think the buildings themselves are pretty nondescript. I do like that. Thank you. I do like that there are lots of windows in the storefronts. So to me, that's the only level of distinction in there. You could do something to make it even more distinctive. I'd encourage you to do that. I'd further encourage you to look into those sustainability things that you can do to minimize the salt into the groundwater. And I know it's difficult, and maybe this is something systemic that we need to address with the city council, where we have to make it easier for people in your position to make sure that you can put solar panels on, and it doesn't have such a confusing part to it. I don't know what the answer is, but I sure like to have some discussions with the city about that, ways we can encourage that among tenants. Aside from that, I think it's well laid out, and I look forward to seeing a more detailed proposal in the future. So thanks for coming in.
Great, thank you. Other comments from commissioners? Anyone else like to comment? Commissioner Banks, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm in support of this as well. I think it checks all the boxes, and I agree with staff and their recommendation to approve this. The only comment I would say in terms of the parking, it sounds like it might be just enough parking, which with that design, I'm not quite sure what you would do with the snow, and which we do get some years quite a bit of. So I'll be interested to see what that snow removal plan that's presented, what the plan is for that, because if you do a restaurant and you do need to use those additional parking spaces, I'm not quite, when I look at that round, I'm not looking at it now, but when I look at the horseshoe shaped picture, it doesn't look like there's a place to put snow that wouldn't interfere with the two-way in and out. So maybe there's, again, maybe because of the scale, I'm not seeing it, but other than that, I think in full support of this, and look forward to seeing a new restaurant in that area. So,
great, thank you. Commissioner Waterman, I think I saw your hand next.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know that I have a ton to add. I'm in support of this. I guess I'd add, just glad that there's been a lot of good discussion, it sounds like, for several months with the city to get this right, such that it's really a fully baked plan. When it comes here, I was kind of struggling to even find much commentary. And also, I just add, I get the need for the for the record, you get the need for the variances, and I find it pretty reasonable in terms of the site plan. I also share a little bit of the concern about the tightness of the parking. I feel like there are certain parking lots around Minnetonka, around the area, that are just places just like, oh, this, I gotta go here again, and deal with the parking. I trust that with all the back and forth, you're getting this right, and maybe I'm not appreciating the scale of it. It might be wise to consider one way around that horseshoe. I like that idea. But I would agree. I think you probably want to put as much parking on here as you can, to avoid some of that tightness, like let people spread out a little bit. Really big fan of the connection, the sidewalk connection, and can hope can make that happen. And really appreciate the public space. I think those are two good small wins for the city that really make this a pretty site plan. The only other thing I'll add, and I'm just channeling from just in talking to friends, just like, hey, this project is coming. So many people were like, hey, we need a salad place. So that's going to go on the record now, but that's the only thing I'm really adding to this. So, but yeah, looks like a good project.
Advocating for salads. Got it. Check. Any other comments? Commissioner Minion, you want to offer any?
I like the project. I think you guys have done a good job of designing it. What I really like about it is the location, and the location of the residences nearby. I think it's going to be a real asset to the people that live immediately there and to our greater community. And I think it'll be a real pat in the back for all of us. I think it'll be a great process. We've kind of hit some stuff. I just encourage you to think about more things about just environmental impact, building a little greener as far as the choices you use in materials, equipment, making sure that it's higher efficiency. The building itself is higher efficiency. My rain leader thing, I think Mr. Paul told me find my lane. Maybe that's my lane, is to make sure that we're try and use those impervious surfaces from the roofs and reuse it in some way. It'd be nice if you put some effort into that. I'd appreciate that. But all in all, I think the city has done a great job. They've said a number of wonderful things about your project, and I won't go on and on. I'll just say I reiterate a number of things that the people have said. I think it's a great project. I'm happy to support it.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Maxwell, you want to offer comments?
Yes, I agree that this is a nice project. I think it's appropriate for this space. It's a reasonable redesign compared to the first proposal that we saw. I like the curvature of it rather than just the sort of rigid rectangles we'd seen before. And I especially like the pergola public space that I think will bring more of, as you said, a neighborhood atmosphere, or tie in the park atmosphere that we're trying to really build in the Ridgedale area with that park nearby. I think it's a well thought out proposal, and I look forward to supporting it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Otherwise, I'll go. Yeah, a lot of the great points have already been said, but we don't get to, as a commission, we don't get to choose what comes before us. We just get to react to it. So while I think housing is a big need here in the city, given what you've brought forward, I like what you've brought forward. I think it complements the development to the north. I think it's going to fit in well. I like the design actually quite a bit. It does kind of create not quite a neighborhood, but at least a pocket for people to gather. And I love the tie-in with the Avidor. The sidewalk is in their best interest, so they should hopefully be amenable to that. So other than that, yeah, I like it, and we'll see about the parking. So I hope you need it all as well, but if not, if we can reclaim some of those spaces to green, I think let's not be afraid to do that in the future. So I'm supportive of it well. So it sounds like we are all in agreement on this one. So if someone would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution to recommend the City Council adopt the ordinance resolutions approving the proposal for items concerning Wells Fargo redevelopment at 1809 Plymouth Road. Would someone like to make that recommendation?
I will make that motion.
A motion, Hanson.
I'll second.
Second, Minion. Staff, please poll the commission.
Henry,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Minion,
Yes.
Waterman,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Chair Soul.
Yes, motion carries, and this is to be heard by the City Council on June 24th. Good luck with your proposal. Moving on to item number 9, adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Oh, please do.
Yep. Just want to understand, I think we're all having issues with the new iPads. Is that something we can look into tonight?
Yes. Well, IT staff that helped with the iPads, they're not here.
Okay.
But can you explain what the...
Thank you.
Thank you. What the issue is?
I think it's right?
I would say nothing opens.
Oh, okay.
Like
Well,
the-
that's easy.
like the
to-
documents.
I think there might be an update, he said, that
Will
was
you do
needed.
me a favor? Will you all try it at home on your own network?
Yep.
To see how it works and then get back to us.
Violently
I had the same problem I always have on Apple products, though, is when I get to larger, like when you get to the Kimley Horn drawing in today's agenda for this, you can go through whatever it is, the 15 pages are 8.5 by 11s, and then you hit that Kimley Horn, you get the second picture, and it just shuts down. It can't handle the volume. Maybe we can do
Are you in iLegislate or are you on the
both,
website?
both the iLegislate and the
Either?
website.
Either way.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
We'll get it fixed.
Could we maybe do a DWG file and just convert them that way, maybe?
Yeah,
But
okay.
Just an idea. Are we still?
Can I make a motion to adjourn and then we
Yeah.
can
Yes.
continue talking about this?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion Hanson, second Minion. All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
aye. Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Good night.